Well, it's the beginning of May, and this is one of my favorite orchids. This is a Dendrobium flexuosum. It comes from northern India, Southeast Asia. Tends to grow in areas that get a lot of monsoonal, wet, humid summers and dry winters with bright conditions. So it does get a dry winter rest, and boy, it comes back and blooms with these spectacular spikes. Great color, great form. You saw this in my last video that was just clusters of unopened blooms. I'll show you, here's a second bloom spike. But even the bloom spike before the flowers open is pretty attractive. So that is a Dendrobium requiring a dry winter rest that really is pretty impressive this time of year. We'll just pass very briefly by Brassia that, again, is blooming probably 10 months out of the year. And it's originally a Trader Joe's orchid, so it has done really well for me over the last 10, 12 years that I've had it. And I want to show you another dry winter rest Dendrobium that is now in flower. And this is Dendrobium phyllum. And again, this grows in Himalaya areas, northern India through Southeast Asia. And well-grown plants, this one's fairly well-grown, but mature older plants will have numerous canes that are pendant, and they just get covered in blooms this time of year. Leaves will fall off in the winter when it goes into the dry winter rest period. You can see one yellowed leaf still hanging onto the cane. But these basically leafless canes will develop flower spikes once watering resumes in February. And then here we are, beginning of May, and we're rewarded with this spike of really pretty fantastic looking flowers. So that is Dendrobium phyllum. And this is my second plant of Cattleya stonehouse. And my other division of this bloomed about a month ago. Flowers are just fading and falling off now, but this second plant is just coming into bloom. As you can see, this flower spike is opened. I think there's a total of 5 spikes. The buds have just emerged from the sheaths. And so it's quite surprising to me that even though this is in a brighter location than my other stonehouse, this is blooming a full 2 months later. So it was just an example of the microclimates and the different way that divisions of what I believe was the same original orchid behave differently and bloom at different times depending on the microclimate where you're growing them. Being the beginning of May, Cattleya skinneri is now coming into bloom. And so you can see the buds developing, and this is the standard color form. Just a great orchid. Likes to throw out a huge amount of roots when the new growths start to emerge. So this is the standard color form, and then I'll just move over and show you the alba or white form that's trailing the standard color form by a few weeks, but these will all open in another few weeks, and we'll see that towards the middle to end of May, but that's Cattleya skinneri. Here's another great example when you have an orchid that's not blooming to move it into a brighter location. This is oncidium splinter, which I showed you in the past, and it was growing in the back in a shadier portion of the greenhouse. Didn't bloom for about 6 years, and now it had the one fairly large bloom spike that I've been showing you, and now this spike is up about 2 foot tall and is still continuing to climb. But great news, a second bloom spike has appeared. So in another few weeks to a few months, we're going to see 4 foot tall flower spikes, maybe taller, with yellow-brown flowers. So something to look forward to in future videos. And for those of you who like fragrance, here's an orchid that you may not be familiar with, but boy, it packs a punch when it comes to fragrance. And this is Sideria japonica. It has got a fragrance that's just so pleasant. There is a Japanese perfume company that has come out with a fragrance based on the scent of this orchid. So it is an orchid that does tend to like cooler temperatures, and hence I've got it in a tray with gravel in clay pots, and that's the orchid's in a net pot with bark and perlite. And the evaporation, evaporative cooling from the clay pot around the net pot helps to keep the root zone cool. So that's Sederia japonica, standard leaf form, which sadly has been pretty badly damaged by slugs in the past, but new leaves hopefully will come out and sustain this plant. And then here's a different leaf form, a little rounder. I haven't had blooms on these yet, but you can see the new roots coming out, and they look pretty happy growing in this condition. So that's Sederia japonica for those of you who want something that's really fragrant and likes cooler temperatures. Even though I do get fairly hot in the summer, this gravel tray and evaporative cooling of the clay pots with a net pot inside seems to satisfy their needs for a cooler root zone. As you know, I like growing Tolumias, and this is a new addition to the collection of about 6 months ago. And this is Tolumia Jurak firm quail eggs. So we'll take a quick look at this. And again, Tolumias are the twig orchids, grow in the Caribbean and require drying of the roots pretty quickly after watering. So I water or mist them daily. But just great little flowers, great small plants. They can be grown windowsill under lights in very tiny pots. And if you've got the greenhouse space and don't mind staying home and misting them on almost a daily basis, you can grow them mounted. This one is on a great piece of grapevine. That's what the roots look like. But just a great little orchid, and that's Tolumia. And then I wanted to show you, I also grow Tillandsias. So obviously, those are air plants. These Tolumias are orchids, Tillandsias are air plants. And this is Tillandsia secunda. And if you have a friend that gives you a small pineapple-y shaped Tillandsia and you don't have room, beware. This guy grows to be a monster. This flower spike now is about 3 feet tall, and it's going to continue to elongate. It'll have side branches with little nondescript purplish green flowers, and the amazing thing is then they're followed by little plantlets which form next to the flowers, and you will literally have tens, if not more, small Tillandsias that you can gift to friends and family. So quite an unusual Tillandsia and pretty spectacular. We will follow it as it continues to grow, sends off side shoots, and then little plantlets develop. So stay tuned. It will be an amazing plant that we'll watch over the next few months. Well, it's now a sunny afternoon on May 13th, a Monday, and my Cattleya stonehouse has got 3 of its 6 flower spikes in full bloom, and it really is a pretty spectacular orchid. As I've mentioned in the past, very temperature tolerant and nicely fragrant as well. So it's growing on primarily medium to large size bark with some coarse perlite in a wire basket with a liner of coconut fiber. And doing really well, gets watered pretty regularly spring, summer. And I just wanted to show you now that we're getting warmer weather, nighttime temperatures are in the high 40s to low 50s in the greenhouse. I've started fertilizing on a pretty regular basis. And what I've started doing the end of last year and now this year is putting a tablespoon of fertilizer in a 5-gallon bucket. And then I'm using a proportioner. And the proportioner just sucks up a little bit of the fertilized water every time I water. I use a number 2 dram, and this is what the siphon comes with. And I'll water in the mornings, and every time I water, then the orchids get a little bit of fertilizer. And I'll go through a 5-gallon bucket in about a week. So that means a tablespoon of fertilizer, which I normally was using in a spray can, and the orchids would get it in a single dose, now gets spread over watering over a week period. And they seem to like the more dilute fertilizer spread over a longer period of time. One of the great orchids that blooms for me in May is Cattleya skinneri. And this is the standard colored form. Just a great orchid, and it has a tendency to really throw out a huge amount of roots once the new growths start emerging. So we'll try to document that after it flowers and new roots start to emerge. But very vigorous grower, and that's the standard purple form. And I'll just go over here. This is the alba form, and it has just a tiny amount of purple in the throat. We'll see if we can find some. No, not too easy to see. I think you can see maybe in there. But this is the alba form, and it's blooming at the same time as well. So I did want to show you my oncidium splinter. I mentioned a week ago that a second bloom spike has started appearing. This is the primary bloom spike that I spotted early on. That's now almost 2.5, almost 3 feet tall. And then the second bloom spike is coming up. So we'll watch that over the course of the next month or two until it blooms. And then there's a plant that's in the back corner, and this one was given to, actually was in our silent auction from Judy and Chuck Seethauer, Marincopa tibacinus kiana. Its claim to fame is it has hollow pseudobulbs, and ants tend to colonize it in its native area, and so there's a commensal relationship between the ants that defend the plant and the orchid that provides hollow pseudobulbs for them to colonize. And this division is now coming to bloom. So we'll try to zoom in and show you what the flower looks like. But pretty impressive looking flower, and these bloom spikes can be up to 15 feet tall. This, as I said, is a new division. I'm surprised it bloomed after the first year, but I'm pretty pleased with the way that is looking. And just moving down the greenhouse, I'll show you a few more. This is one of the orchids that requires a dry winter rest. This is Dendrobium thriciflorum, and it will only be in bloom for about a week, so I wanted to give you a good look at that. And there's another one in the back that's just coming into bloom. Here we go. And bloom spike back here, but that's Dendrobium thriciflorum. And this grows in the Himalayas, northern India, Southeast Asia, and it gets no water from about Thanksgiving to Valentine's Day. And then when you start watering it, you get rewarded a few months later with these spectacular blooms. An oncidium that's unique in that it is solid yellow. Usually there's some brown splotching on the petals. And this one is Oncidium Mayfair Trinity. And we've got a second bloom spike coming up on this guy. And if you pay attention to another video on the Five Cities channel, I believe Eric Holenda talks about allowing the dancing lady oncidiums to dry completely between waterings, and tend to put them in smaller pots, let those roots dry out, and you'll be rewarded with a happy plant that sends up multiple bloom spikes. Tolumia continues to bloom. You've seen these in the past, and I'll just go briefly through those. This one is quail eggs. Just a great little oncidium that's now in full bloom. And let's see the tag here. Whoops. So you can see Jirac firm quail eggs. A few more oncidiums going. And then I mentioned Tillandsia secunda, the rather large airplant Tillandsia. And you can see from just a week and a half ago when I shot the first part of this video, we're now up, I would say that spike is about 3 feet. And I'm going to have to move it. It's now hitting the Tolumia that's coming into bloom. And then just below, this was a real surprise, one of my favorite orchids, Sunset Valley Orchid 7093. Normally blooms about February, and here we are in the middle of May, and this plant has produced another bloom spike. This is the first time this plant has actually bloomed for me. I have a number of these that came out of flask, so this is 7 years out of flask, and the first time this plant's bloomed, but just a great flower, and really like that one. And passing a few Tolumias on the way. And there's a number of spikes that are yet to bloom, so I'll have Tolumias in bloom for probably the next 3 or 4 months. I wanted to show you a Miltonia that is blooming on this side of the greenhouse. So the Zygopedilum from Tim Culbertson you saw earlier. And this is the Dendrobium densifolium hybrid that came from Asbel Orchids in San Luis Obispo. Sadly, after Bob Asbel passed away, they closed and are no longer in business. This Miltonia, and this is Miltonia spectabilis semi-alba. And this came from Ecuagenera in Ecuador, but a great looking flower, mounted on an oak branch, and I've got a second bud that will be opening in a few weeks. So this will be in bloom for quite a while, but just a really nice flower. This is the semi-alba form. There's a folied purple one with very large flowers, a variety of Belvedere, and I'm not sure mine is going to bloom this year, but I'll try to splice in a picture of what Belvedere looks like so you can compare the two. And then lastly, for this brief segment of my May video, I wanted to show you this one. The first time I saw this, I didn't believe it was an orchid, but this is Arctophyllum spicatum, and it sends up this spike of small purple flowers, but pretty impressive. And this again is a division of a plant that came from Asbel Orchids. And sadly, when Bob Asbel passed away, Dave, his son, sold the business and moved away. But I'll splice in a photo of what the original plant with Bob and Dan looks like. And I'm pretty pleased that after a few years of it being divided, it looks like it's doing well, and hopefully will continue to grow and send up additional spikes. And here's a photo from a few years back, Bob on the left, Dan on the right, and the Arctophyllum filling the center stage. Well, it's now May 18th, and my Cousitheania pendulata is finally in full bloom, and this is just a spectacular orchid. This is the bloom spike, and you can see it is pendulous and hanging down from the orchid, which is in a wire basket. I've got several of these. They came out of a flask from Marnie Turkle in 2016, so it's taken 9 years to get to this point where I've got the blooms. And again, just a fantastic orchid with very showy, very pendulous bloom spikes. And I want to show you a hybrid of Prostheca cochleata that Norman's Orchids down in Montclair in the Los Angeles area, Norman's Orchids has produced. And this is a dark color version, and this is a hybrid. I'll grab the tag from Norman's Orchids, and this is Black Comet Norman's Indigo cochleata and Grantia Etoile Nor, obviously black orchid. So this, which would normally be a Prostheca cochleata, which is white, and Norman Fong has produced this rather stunning dark-colored version, which keeps the cochleata form, but in a darker color. Pretty neat. And I wanted to show you, this is another trick-or-treat hybrid. This is crossed with Miltonia. See if I can get the, there There you go, Miltonia by Trick or Treat. And this is a hybrid from Santa Barbara Orchid Estate that I purchased a number of years ago. But the interesting thing here is all my Trick or Treats have stopped blooming about a month and a half ago. And this one has just come into bloom now, so the middle of May. So this extends the blooming season for my favorite Trick or Treats. And I want to walk down towards the back of the greenhouse and show you Tolumia secunda, my air plant, which is putting on about a foot of growth on the flower spike every week. So we're now well over 3 feet tall, and it's climbing into the ficus green gem. So this is going to be pretty spectacular as its side branches and little plantlets develop off the ends. Yeah, you need to have a little bit of room if you're going to grow Tolumia secunda. And one more orchid on the side of my greenhouse. This is Encyclia prismatocarpa. And this one comes from Santa Barbara Orchid Estate. And just a great little combination of spotted petals and sepals in that spade purple lip. Just a great little orchid. And I've got another division of this with in sheath that's going to have several flower spikes, but really great bright color combination. So that's Encyclia prismatocarpa. And this is Maxillaria tenuifolia. And the claim to fame of this orchid is the fragrance. If you want to smell a Hershey's chocolate candy bar with maybe a little coconut in it, boy, Maxillaria tenuifolia is the orchid for you. Easy to grow. I'm told it doesn't like repotting, but this has been growing in a net pot with, it looks like, I'm having a hard time seeing hydroton clay pellets. I've had this in this net pot for probably the last 5 or 6 years, but the plant has just gotten huge. It's going to have several hundred flower spikes, and this is the standard brick red color form, spotted lip. There is an alba form, which I got a division of from Tim Culbertson last year that I'm hoping will bloom later this summer, and it is a pretty much yellow form of this same orchid with the same fragrance. So that's Maxillaria tenuifolia, and if you want to impress people with scent, it is the chocolate scented orchid. And as my greenhouse continues to get overcrowded, I'm finding that I'm focusing more and more on miniature orchids. They take up less space, get some pretty nice flowers, and here's one that is just coming into bloom. This is Encyclia bractensis, and it's got a pretty little flower, if I can keep it from shaking. And they don't take up very much room, as you can see. I have a number of these that came out of a flask from Marnie Turkle, and that's one that's in bloom. But nice compact orchid you could mount on a piece of cedar, and they just add a nice little accent. So again, that's Encyclia bractensis. And of course there's the Tolumias, which you've seen in the past. And I've got a number of them now coming into bloom. But again, take up very little room if you've got some overcrowding problems like I do, and provide you with pretty nice blooms for a number of months. And one more look at Cattleya stonehouse. It is now pretty much in full bloom, And I thought you'd enjoy seeing what it looks like with all the flower spikes now open. We're now into the last week of May, and this is Dendrobium chrysotoxum. This is another one of those orchids that requires a dry winter rest. This was mounted probably 6 or 7 years ago. And if you know how to take care of these dendrobiums that require dry winter rest, they get an occasional misting throughout the winter, but basically dry from Thanksgiving to Valentine's Day. You'll be rewarded with sprays of these really bright orange flowers come April, May. The only downside to this dendrobium is the flowers will probably last about a week, and so it's a fairly short-lived show, but pretty spectacular. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, this is a hybrid of Dendrobium culbersoni. Let me zero in on the actual name. And this comes from Equigenera. The culbersoni is known for flowers that can last 6 to 9 months, and pretty fantastic looking flowers. The crosses that Equigenera offers means that culbersoni can only grow in areas where the maximum summer temperatures are 85, and I'm well above that. But this hybrid has done well for me over the last 5 years, and you can see these blooms have been open for several months now. So I can grow what looks like culbersoni, but under much warmer conditions. Let me just show you a little closer. So if you think you can't grow a particular type of orchid because of the temperature regime where you're growing your orchids, look for hybrids that maybe expand the temperature range and still give you the kind of floral and the foliage displays that you're looking for. So that's the culbersoni hybrid, and I'm just going to walk to the other side of the greenhouse and show you. This was kind of a surprise. Bought this non-bloom orchid at Norman's Orchids down in Montclair in the LA, Los Angeles area. And it surprised me in the back of the greenhouse with this rather spectacular bloom. And I'll give you the name of this from Norman's Orchids. It's a hybrid, and I think I'll leave this up a little bit so you can see it's a fairly elaborate name. And that again is from Norman's Orchids. And we've seen this guy a little while ago. Here's an oncidium that I don't know exactly what the species is, but oncidiums do well in small pots, allowed to completely dry between watering. This is in hydroton in a net basket, and then I place that inside a clay pot. And it'll get misted and watered pretty frequently in the summer, but boy, in the winter, you really need to make sure it dries between waterings. And this was a division of a plant grown by Larry Verheulig, one of our Five Cities Orchid Society members that passed away a few years back. And he had this growing as a specimen plant in the front of his greenhouse. And we were all lucky enough to get divisions of this plant. And it's got 3 flower spikes. And again, the flowers are pretty spectacular on spikes that are about 2.5 feet tall. So that is an unnamed oncidium. And then again, the Prismatocarpa, which we've seen previously, still going strong and blooming pretty nicely. I wanted to show you this. This is a little terrestrial ground orchid, and Satomi from Seed Engie was our speaker last month at our Orchid Society, and this was one of her finds. She has a number of orchids that come from Korea and Japan, and this is Panorchis grandifolia, and I'll put her website up. Seed Engie is kind of an interesting name, but little ground orchid goes completely dormant in the wintertime. I wasn't sure it was going to come back, and it has come back this year, and for the second year, and has a few growths with 2 flower spikes. So again, if you're into miniatures, that's one that I was not aware of, but you may be worthwhile checking out. And then we're just going to go around to the other side of the greenhouse in a little brighter area and show you another one of Satomi's favorite orchids, and this is Neophonetia falcata. And these, whoops, let me get my thumb out of the way or finger out of the way. These are prized orchids in Japan. They command fairly high prices. Again, Satomi on her website has some reasonably priced plants. And this one is unusual in that it has a purple flower. And let's just pull the tag out. This is actually a hybrid, a Rainbow Stars Pink Gem. And I think I got this one from Diamond Orchids, Peter Lynn, in Diamond Bar, California, again in the Los Angeles area. Here's another Neophonetia falcata, and you can see the roots are doing really well. There's a lot of care instructions on how to properly care for these in pots, usually growing in sphagnum moss. Should be repotted every year, which I am not faithful in doing, unfortunately, which is probably why I don't get as many blooms as I should on these. And I just want to show you that I've started mounting Neophonetia falcata, and I just mounted this a few weeks ago, and already it's initiating some pretty nice roots. So I'm pretty pleased with how this plant is looking, and we'll come back to it over time to see how the Neophonetia falcata is doing mounted on a small section of grapevine. And then lastly, I wanted to finish off the oncidium, the trick-or-treat hybrid that's finishing up, and then the Sidereya japonica still blooming nicely. Oh yeah, and there's the hibiscus down below in the bench. That is one of my wife's favorites. But I wanted to mention that I've now started my misting system. So about every 4 to 5 hours for 45 seconds, the entire greenhouse is flooded with a mist. I do collect 10,000 gallons of rainwater every winter in the rainy season. And that suffices for all my water needs in the greenhouse, and then a little bit extra. So misting with hard water, if you're on municipal water, tends to produce a lot of deposits on leaves and whatnot. So if you can collect rainwater and connect it to a misting system or use reverse osmosis water, that's certainly preferred for a misting system. But it does give me a lot of flexibility on very warm summer days to increase the frequency of misting, and that helps to keep the maximum temperatures a little lower than they otherwise would be. And then I've also designed this greenhouse so that the side walls all can be opened, and I do vent the greenhouse through the open side walls. You can see they tilt outward, and then the prevailing winds come from the west. We're 8 miles from the ocean, and so I do have these screen panels that are sliders, and I keep those open. Starting about May 1st, the greenhouse these stay open all night, and it helps to cool the greenhouse at night and give me the results that you've seen. Oh, and then, yeah, 2 more things. Again, oncidium splinter. We're still waiting to see some branching and blooms, but we're now up to about a 4-foot spike, and then the second spike is about 2 feet. And then we can't forget going to the back. I'll just take a quick look at the cymbidium. And going to the back, I wanted to show you Tillandsia secunda one last time. Just a few weeks ago, we were dealing with a 3-foot spike, and now we are well over 4 foot and still climbing. So if you have Tillandsia secunda, just be prepared. These guys do send up some pretty large spikes about every 8 to 10 years. And we'll end with this Tolumia quail eggs, one of my favorites. And here's another great hybrid that blooms the end of May, early June. It's a Leelia purpurata, or now Cattleya purpurata hybrid. And this is Laelia purpurata El Supremo and Cattleya warneri alba hybrid. And this comes from Cal Orchid down in Santa Barbara. But takes cool winter temperatures. And this year got a single flower spike, but it does have 4 pretty nice flowers. Pretty intense lip on that. As May draws to a close, my Lycaste is starting to bloom, and this is a very interesting orchid that goes completely dormant in the winter and loses all of its leaves. You can see the new growth is just starting to come out now, and this is Lycaste macrobulbon times aromatica. The aromatica has an amazing fragrance that smells just like cinnamon. Sadly, this hybrid does not carry over that same fragrance, but just a cute little orchid. There are a number of Lycastes that are much larger that have pink and white flowers. So again, if you are looking for something unusual that maybe the average orchid grower hasn't seen, Lycastes are certainly something to consider. Real easy to take care of. Tend to like more this one growing in bark, shallow pots, and just give them a dry winter rest, and come springtime, start watering them, and you'll be rewarded with these wonderful flowers. And if you get Lycaste aromatica, you'll be amazed. The scent of cinnamon is pretty outstanding. So I'm not growing this as well as it should. This should be covered with probably 30 or 40 blossoms, but every year I think I improve, and hopefully this will get larger and better as time goes on. And then I just wanted to show you one orchid that is pretty unusual. This came from the Huntington Botanical Gardens as a division, and down in the Los Angeles area, San Marino. And this is Vanilla imperialis. And when I designed my greenhouse, there was this corner, didn't plan for it, but it is ideal for vanilla vine. So again, if you're in an area where it's relatively cool and you don't think you can grow vanilla, this takes temperatures down in the low 40s in the winter. And you can see what happens. It sends out these roots from the nodes. And eventually, I'm told the plant, which is now planted in a pot with a bromeliad on top of it, will lose most of its roots anchored to the pot, and will just sustain itself from the aerial roots that are, as you can see, pretty extensive and growing attached to my vertical. So I'm going to just end with a number of photos of new growths, new roots that are appearing. The end of May, you should be repotting, hopefully just as roots emerge, and fertilizing on a very regular basis. So I'll just end here and mention, if you like these videos, go to www.fcos.org. You can subscribe to our newsletter and see regular updates monthly. I'll just, as I said, end with a few photos of emerging roots and emerging shoots, which indicate we're going to have a great future with blooming orchids. Great. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next month.